Good morning, everybody. Happy second Saturday. Today is Sunday, and even though it's second Saturday, I am going to get started on my Mormon story. Remember, on Sundays, this is kind of what I'm doing for now, is just a portion of my Mormon story. If you have missed my previous Mormon stories, they were on TikTok. TikTok is gone. You can also see my my Mormon story in portions on YouTube. That is the best place to watch, probably, because I'm able to post the entire video on YouTube, and these portions get a little bit longer. And then also on Instagram, but they are in parts, so you'll have to watch them in parts that way. So definitely go and check that out if you've missed the first part, which covered my childhood and part of the beginning of Young Women's, when I entered Young Women's. This portion today is going to be largely about my youth in the church. It is not at all inclusive of every experience that I had. It's a good overview, though, and some of the things that I was taught in the church. So yes, my Mormon story, part 3. At the end of my last part of my Mormon story, I talked a little bit about how I personally internalized female selfishness, and I absorbed that from the church and its teachings. I do want to emphasize this as we continue, because it's a message, I feel like the message that, I couldn't be selfish or impolite or needful of anything because it was an inconvenience to other people and it was a burden. That was a huge part of my own indoctrination. And of course, the types of indoctrination that we absorb in the church is different for every person. And so that may not have been what you came out with, but this is what happened to me. This is where my trauma comes from. This is where my triggers are. And this is the damage that I received from the church, at least part of it. It's not just selfishness, like the ingrained anti-selfishness that was put in there. So, but it's a big deal for me. And so this is going to basically stain all of the rest of my history in the church from this point on. So yeah, that is an indoctrination that just influenced every decision that I made going forward from here. I feel like more than anything, and this wasn't even in relation to like young women specifically or as youth, it was throughout my entire church experience. There was an emphasis for girls and women as I became a member of the Relief Society as I was an adult, to not be selfish in any way. Selfishness is a sin, and it's terrible. It's the worst thing that you can be as a female, honestly. Not really honestly, but as far as the church was concerned, and maybe not as a specific commandment, but definitely as the teachings that are conveyed in the church. And it seemed like everything was selfish. Whether it was in the church or out of the church, it didn't matter what I did. I was going to be selfish. Whatever choice I made, it was selfish for me to not want to do a service project, because the whole purpose of being on earth is to serve others. It was selfish of me to want to wear shorts or a tank top, because I was not thinking about how that would affect the boys. Never mind that it was really hot sometimes, or that I didn't want to get like a farmer's tan on my arms or something like that. But that personal desire of mine would have been very vain, very dismissed as petty or worldly, or, again, selfish and disobedient, because I was supposed to cover my shoulders. I couldn't wear a tank top. I was supposed to be modest because my shoulders, and now I don't wear garments anymore, but now the church has sleeveless garments. But when I was growing up, shoulders were considered pornography. And so if you showed your shoulders, you were walking pornography. That is something we were taught. So yeah, it was selfish and disobedient. It was selfish for girls to want to have a career and or to not have children, because a career was about her and motherhood was selfless. And it was selfish for women to only want a couple of children and not a brood, because she was hindering the ability for God's little souls to come to earth. It was selfish for women to want to have a lot of kids, because it meant that her time and resources couldn't go far enough to give them everything they need to thrive. And it was selfish for a woman to want to go to work outside of the home, because she was worldly and only concerned about money, and someone else would be raising her children, which is bullshit, by the way. Takes a village, man. It was selfish to stay home and to not work outside the home, because she would not be contributing to the household, and the rest of that would solely rely on the man. And what about his needs? Likewise, she would not be contributing to society. And did she expect society to pull her weight for her? It was selfish for a woman to have a sex drive, because that made her slutty and promiscuous and damaged her angelic countenance. But it was selfish not to have any kind of a sex drive at all, because she needed to meet the needs of her husband. You can never turn down a calling for any reason. Never decline to speak in church or anything that makes you uncomfortable, infringes on your time or energies or personal space, etc., because that's selfish. You do what you're asked to do, what you're told to do. You sit down, you be quiet, you shut up, you be pretty. And, it's you must give all your time and energy and talents to the church. It isn't about you, the woman. It can never be about you as a woman. Women must never, ever need anything. Not time, not money, not childcare, not rest. My patriarchal blessing, and I will get to that today, is that you will be a tireless worker. I am tired. I was tired every time, every day in the church. I was exhausted. Women are always told that they are made to give, and this is what we're made for. Nothing I have is mine, not my time, not my body. All of it belongs to God first, then my husband, then my children, and heaven forbid any of those things compete with each other, because my body cannot belong to me. Now, I'm going to move on to some more topics. But keep the selfishness thing in mind as we move forward, even in other videos, because it's always oil on the surface. It's always on the surface. Priesthood was a big deal to me. My dad it was a big deal in the sense that it was very comforting to me. My dad was very, very generous in his blessings and priesthood. He gave me blessings anytime that I felt sick or scared, literally any time that I needed or asked, even if it was frivolous or weird or just anxiety induced or something like that. My dad always would give me a blessing. I was a very, very anxious child. I'm still a very anxious person. I am working on that, and I've been much better since I got out of the church, but I'm still very anxious. So I was very grateful for that, because I actually had friends whose dads would not give them blessings for anything, because it wasn't for anything. It was not to be taken advantage of. And they had to be either really, really sick, or maybe their dads would do like father's blessings at the beginning of the school year, but like they had to be like in dire need of a priesthood blessing before their dad would give it to them. I learned to rely on priesthood blessings as a comfort. And so even if I was sick and like I never had a miraculous recovery or anything like that, but like it was a comfort to me. So I was really grateful that my dad would accommodate me anytime I needed. And that appreciation of the priesthood continued into adulthood, which was kind of the beginning of a binding thing that made me kind of afraid to step away from the church, and along with that, selfishness. So I'm building some foundations here, so bear with me. I will get to all of it in time. It wasn't that it was said often, if ever, but it definitely implied that Mormons were the only good people, not just at church, but also in my family. I don't think by any means that my parents were like, you know, my mom was a preschool teacher. She taught lots of children that were not Mormon, and she didn't ask that question. Like, she, you know, was a very accepting, loving person. My dad, you know, with work and everything, just being like, he's a very serviceable kind of person. He was a contractor, drywall contractor, and like ultimate handyman. He can literally make, build, fix, whatever, anything. And he's the kind of person who would be right there in any kind of emergency for any person. So like, you know, like, I don't want to imply that my parents were like, I don't know, biased in it, you know, like, I mean, they were, that there's the bias there that, you know, Mormonism was the correct thing. You know, I don't even know. I don't know what the word is. I feel like there's a word and I'm forgetting what it is, but you know, like, they were not against other people or think automatically that they were bad, you know, but Mormons were people they could trust. Do you know what I mean? So, you know, if I wanted to, you know, go to a friend's house, like, I'd make a new friend, the first thing that I would be asked, well, are they Mormon? And if I wanted to go to a friend's house for a sleepover or something, like, literally telling my mom that they were Mormon would diffuse any fear she had. It was kind of a safe pass. And that was definitely fortified with teachings in the church, in primary and young women's. You surround yourself with people who have the same beliefs as you, because they're going to lift you up. They're going to help you meet your goals. They're going to help you stay on the path, versus other people are just going to bring you down. You can't really bring them up. You have to distance yourself, because they will bring you down. They will make you do drugs. They will make you drink coffee. They will make you drink alcohol. And only Mormons are going to be the ones who are going to respect your boundaries that way. Which is ironic, because Mormons literally do not respect anybody's boundaries. Anyway, so yeah, if they were Mormon, they were good. Everyone I went to school with and everyone I played with in the neighborhood, you know, they were all Mormons. So it really wasn't a conflict for me. It was just like, oh yeah, everybody's Mormon. I met my friends at church mostly, and the friends from church went to the same school, so there wasn't a lot of like crossover, different groups. And it wasn't really that I couldn't hang out with non-Mormons, but it would almost always be at my house, not theirs. And it was definitely like this diffusion when I'd be like, okay, they're Mormon, and it just was like, oh, okay, good, you're good to go, they're safe. But it really wasn't probably until late junior high or so that I really started to realize there was kind of a world outside of my Mormon bubble. In seminary, which I started in 9th grade, and I'm in Utah, so I didn't have to do early morning seminary. I know that a lot of people in other states, or maybe more rural parts of Utah or whatever, I don't know exactly, they have to do what's called early morning seminary. So it's even more dedicated. You have to get up early and go to school very early in the morning and take this extra class, and that's seminary. Here in Utah, the kids get to take seminary as a class. And so there's in most high schools, junior highs, there is a seminary building that's kind of like a church, and it's on the property of the high school, or like right across the street. I don't know if it's actually on the property of the church, of the school, but it's like right across the street or so. So the kids will just walk over there for their seminary period, and they will just have seminary. They'll have a church class in the middle of their school day, and that's what I did. So I did not have to do early morning seminary, except for when there were like like I'm sorry, when there were like firesides or something special in the morning that we would go to, which we did fairly often, I guess. But my seminary class was just during the day, and I am so grateful for that, because it didn't take away from my sleep. I feel like that's less of a sacrifice that I have to be bitter about. Anyway, so yeah, in seminary I learned, I did not learn anything historical about the church. Like not true history anyway, beyond the Doctrine and Covenants and like the first vision that is taught. And the first vision that is taught in seminary and to most Mormons is not the actual first vision. It's more like the third or fourth version of the first vision. The first couple of first vision records show that only Jesus appeared, and not two personages, just Jesus. And I think in one of them it even says like it was an angel, not even like Christ himself, but I could be wrong on that. I've read the first visions and compared side by side. It's not the thing that made me leave the church. So it's like interesting, but not like the consequence, Anyway, so I did not learn any true history with actual records from the women of the time who wrote in journals or affidavits or newspapers, articles or anything like that. I did not learn any kind of true history with any kind of record or any kind of resource. The only source that we had was just the Doctrine and Covenants, and only cherry-picked parts that would make us feel good about our religion or feel like the pioneers, that they were treated unfairly and persecuted. We didn't learn about the reasons they were persecuted, which were completely valid reasons, honestly. Polygamy, marrying young girls, Joseph burning the printing press. Like, he did a lot of illegal things. And Mormons like to say, well, it was because it was from God. Well, guess what? The Article of Faith says that we believe in obeying the law. So I'm not going to repeat the whole thing because I think I don't remember them anymore by heart. Maybe if I got started, maybe it would come back to me. But there's one that says we believe in honoring and sustaining the law, and he did not. So yeah, he was in jail and persecuted for really good reason, honestly. Not to say that the things that the mobs did to these people were okay, because they weren't. They really did a lot of damage, and they hurt a lot of innocent people too. I'm not justifying it entirely. I'm just saying that it wasn't just black and white, in the sense that the pioneers and the Mormons and Joseph and everything were just totally innocent. Like, it wasn't like that. The violence was not okay. It just was that it just was not. It's not what we were taught. We weren't taught the whole story. So just very, very specific, very cherry-picked, very whitewashed Mormon history. Funnily enough, speaking of history, I was actually told that the dragon, this is totally like separate, but it was from seminary. It's not about the Book of Mormon, but the dragon that Daniel slays, if you remember that in the Bible, that people were worshiping it, and Daniel kills it because he's like, if it can die, it's not a god. Okay, so he kills it. I was told that they were worshiping a dinosaur that was found in like the jungles of Africa, and it was brought back and somehow survived all the other dinosaurs and everything. And that was kind of ridiculous to be taught that, but that's what I was taught. And then it's even funnier because I was curious about this as an adult now as I was preparing, and I Googled it. I was like, what did I Google? What was the dragon that Daniel killed? And literally on Google, it says that it was a dinosaur. So maybe go look it up, because it's just kind of ridiculous. Like, but I was definitely, I was taught that. Like, there was not anybody who specifically denied like history, like biological history outright to me, or that said dinosaurs didn't exist. But there was definitely the theory that the bones were from other worlds. When God made this planet, he took the parts of the planet from other planets, and then the bones were just there, and so they were buried, and we found them. There's the bones are remnants of that. And then I did have one seminary teacher who insisted that dinosaurs did exist alongside people, which is ridiculous, of course. But then I think it was the same teacher who explained that Daniel killed a dinosaur. And so, that's just funny to me. It was kind of like actually lost in the dark pathways of my brain until I was putting all of this together there. I had no clue, though, that there were ever other accounts of the first vision. That I thought there was one account. I was taught that that one single account, and that with Joseph went to his father immediately after receiving the first vision, and his father believed him because he was such an honest person. And now I've learned that Joseph didn't tell anybody about it for years and years because it didn't happen. So he's like, oh yeah, when I was 14, I had this vision. Years later, he told people. And there are multiple accounts of the first vision. I already talked about that. I was also told that polygamy was grievous to Joseph and Emma, and that they struggled with it, and so God told them that they didn't have to do it, but that it had to be rolled out to the church as a whole. And I was actually taught that. But no, he was a polygamist. Like, the church and its members like to gaslight and be like, oh, it's available on the website. I've always known that. No, you haven't. You have not. Oh, not if you're my age, okay? Like, maybe my kids have always been kind of inoculated against that to some degree about Joseph's polygamy, but I was not. I did not know that. We didn't have the internet in that capacity. We could email each other. We had the Oregon Trail game, but we did not have Google until I was in college, okay? And even then, the amount of information that was on the internet and the church website was not there. In fact, the gospel topic essays which address Joseph's polygamy weren't even added to the church website until 2013. So that was only almost 12 years ago. So that's not that long. I have kids older than that. I have a 20-year-old daughter. So she did not have the access to that either. Anyway, I feel like as a youth, I was taught Emma was vilified to a degree. She wasn't faithful. She left after Joseph died, which was like this really bad betrayal kind of thing. And now at the time I actually left the church, when I left, there was kind of a 180 and Emma was very revered. And I have mixed feelings about that, about Emma, and mixed feelings about the polygamist women and stuff. It's another thing that I will talk about in a video. It's not applicable to this at this time. It deserves its own whole topic, but you know, it's not really directly pertinent, but I have feelings. I have feelings about that because it's very mixed bag. Anyway, Brigham Young was kind of thrown under the bus. Brigham Young was the big bad guy with polygamy, you know, and as far as my youth went, and it never sat well with me anyway. Like, I dismissed him very quickly because he seemed so disturbing and gross to me. But basically, I was taught after him that polygamy was gone. Like, he was the polygamist. There were other polygamists at the time, sure, but like after Brigham Young, polygamy went away. So he was just like the one bad guy, you know, but I wasn't aware of the several generations that it affected, the several prophets that were participating in that. It was just kind of like, oh, polygamy was a thing, but it's not now, so we're good. And you don't have to feel good about it now because you're not supposed to feel good about it. God took it from the earth. It's not supposed to be here now. It's not supposed to feel good right now. Someday you'll feel good about it because it will be a thing that will be necessary again. We were definitely taught it would eventually come back. And like, how do all the women, all the girls sitting in those classes thinking, oh, you don't get to have a love story. You just get to be another wife. You know, like, it's really a disturbing thing that girls are taught, and boys shouldn't be taught that they, I mean, there's a lot of different aspects of it. There's the gross aspect. Oh, you get to have lots of girls that you get to sleep with or whatever. But there's also like a huge responsibility for boys. Like, how are you going to manage to take care of all of the emotional and physical and financial needs of multiple women and children? You know, like, there's a responsibility there as well that goes beyond just the gross implication that a guy just gets to bang all these women. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's complicated, it's complex, and it's not good for anyone. It's not good for anybody, not the girls, not the boys. Anyway, so yeah, we're not supposed to feel good about it. It will come back someday. And of course, the whole rhetoric was that they married so many women to take care of them. Nothing about polyandry or Joseph's wives or the sex trafficking or underage girls getting married to old men. If I did hear that, it was along the lines of, oh, it's because they didn't live as long back then, which is bullshit. It's not true. It was normal for them to get married so young. The average woman got married at that time at about 28 years old. They did not get married at 14. If they did get married at 14 or 15, it was because they married another 14 or 15-year-old person, a boy that was the same age. That happened. Sure, that still happens. The massive age difference was not really a statistical significant thing. But yeah, and also there were so many women. So the men had to take care of them. They had to make sure that all the women got a husband. There were just too many women. Anyway, so yeah, and this one's good. It's just a celestial marriage for eternity. They weren't married in this life, just for forever, which is crap, because we have journals from girls who were like, I can't go to dances. I can't go and be with other 17-year-old kids. I can't do the things that kids my age are doing. I have to stay here because I am a wife. Yeah, we don't believe that though, because they're women. So may or may not be true, right? But yeah, I don't even think I knew about the threat with the flaming sword until my late 20s or early 30s. It's in the D&C, it is, but I was not great at reading church materials just for fun or on my own. So I read what I was told to read in seminary and in church, and that's it. And that was not presented to me. That was not something that they talk about on a regular basis. Like I said, history I was taught was very specific, very curated, and very church-sided. When I was in the 9th grade seminary, I remember being told how privileged we were. And absolutely, we are privileged. I'm not disputing that. We are privileged. To be born in the church during this time and this place, and in my economical circumstances, and as a white privileged person, that meant that this is where I get the issue. Don't have a problem being called privileged. I absolutely am, but this is where I take issue. Being a privileged person, that meant that I was extra valiant in the pre-earth life, and that it made me special, and that I earned my whiteness and, my relative wealth and comfort by defending God in the pre-existence. I was really confused by this. I didn't understand that. I didn't feel valiant. I felt imperfect and frustrated, and, I looked like a very well-behaved, very outwardly like a really perfect Mormon girl. But inside I was just like this volcano of rage and hormones and angst and sadness and depression and sex and inadequacy. And it was just such a contradiction, because I was told that everyone is equal and racism is bad. But then I'm told that I'm special because I'm white and affluent. And I was told that I wasn't supposed to be selfish or take up space or be outspoken or demand attention or anything, but also that I had earned all of this privilege and that I deserved my position in society, and that other people who had dark skin or who were living in poverty or had very difficult trials, well, they also deserved what they had. And that it was my job to literally be a missionary and speak up when things were wrong and bring people to God, but also shut up. We don't talk. Girls do not have opinions. Girls do not have needs. Girls do not get to preach. I couldn't figure out how all of these things could all be true. I was starting to learn about the world and history and science. I had a really hard time believing that those claims could be true. The kinds of pain and struggle that people in other countries, or poverty, or even just the person on the street next to me who was not a member of the church, they had those trials, and God just was serving them up what they deserved. Didn't seem like a good or righteous God. And also, I'm adding this in here. Also, we were taught that trials mean that God loves you, and so he is giving you those trials so you can learn a lesson, so that you can be stronger and strengthen your testimony. So there was another juxtaposition. There were all these people who were super suffering, and they had these indications that they weren't as good as me, because I was white and I was wealthy. I was not a rich kid, but you know what I mean? Like there was definitely comfort levels, and I was not in poverty. And There were people who were in poverty, who were born into poverty, who were darker skinned, of any kind of, like, anything that wasn't white. So that's not even just like black, that's like any kind of ethnicity that isn't white, okay? So they were born into these circumstances because they were bad, and so they were being punished. But also, if you have trials and you are struggling with things, it's because God loves you, and so he's testing you so that you can gain a testimony and gain the Spirit and become stronger. And how do you know the difference? How do you know if you're being punished versus how do you know if you are just being tried so that you can be stronger? And it was just very, very difficult for me to just reconcile that in my head and make sense of what any of those things were. And I just ruminated on it a lot. You know, like I listened, I was there, I took the lessons, I made notes, I read the scriptures, and I just was like, this doesn't sit well with me. It does not make sense. And, you know, I'm sorry, I lost my place. The kinds of, that God didn't seem fair and loving. And, you know, he was serving them up what they deserved, serving me up what I deserved, which was good stuff. But I had expectations that God should be good and fair and loving. That's what I had been taught as a primary child, that God loved me unconditionally, and I was good, and I was worthy of that, and I just needed to be good and kind to people. And that's what I was taught as a young child. But then, you know, you can juxtapose this with the very wealthy people in the world who are obviously not super righteous, even if they weren't like egregiously evil. If they weren't righteous people, then why did they have privileges of any kind, if privilege was a direct and specific sign that you were elect of God? So that was also confusing. Even at that young age, I recognized the complexities of human existence, and to believe that God was just giving us our deserved circumstances did not seem in line with the atonement or compassion and love that I was always hearing of. I didn't want to believe in a mean, terrifying God. I wanted and needed something more comforting and kinder. I wanted to believe that he wanted the best for us, which to me meant that he wouldn't make us suffer as a punishment for things before we, you know, existed and could remember. There's this contradiction of he loves you so much and unconditionally, but also not if you make a mistake, not if you're a person of color, not if you're gay, and not if you're a girl. Like, I knew also that God supposedly destroyed whole civilizations in the scriptures because of their wickedness. And that was an early shelf item for me because I just didn't deal with it like at all, except to think, well, they were actively wicked in their lifetime, I guess. Like, little babies in poverty-stricken countries dying of starvation don't remember why they're in pain, you know? You have to be able to understand and connect the dots between your actions and consequences in order for punishment to work as a punishment and not just as abuse. So then again, back to the babies, in those destroyed civilization, there's this idea that babies who die because their parents are wicked and are perfect souls will be raised in the millennium by righteous people. So it's okay. It's better for them to die as infants than to be raised as in a wicked culture and then have those sins on their conscience. So remember that weird struggle that I talked about in my last one about being that I had as a little child, where I kind of wanted to systematically off babies? Like, I wondered why we didn't do that, just because if the babies went to heaven before they were at the age of accountability, then they would be perfect and they would have heaven. And it didn't seem right to me. It bothered my soul. I wanted very much to feel good about being called special. I did want to be special, but just, you know, the beginning of feeling othered from people in a way that I hadn't thought of before became a problem, which was a major issue for me, and probably the very first thing that kind of led to actual steps away from the church when I did start to step out. I talked about this in seminary class once. It was a lesson about being a peculiar people and how it's great to stand out because of our modesty, our lack of piercings, or deformed skin due to tattoos. because we don't drink or smoke, that we have clean haircuts and dress a certain way, to be modest in our makeup and not having extreme hairstyles. Side note here, I know I look like a little momish cottagecore boho kind of girl right now, but from about 13 through like my mid-20s, I had dyed my hair colorfully, blues, purples, pinks, reds, and that was super annoying to hear this rhetoric. And it wasn't a rebellion. I was accused of rebellion a lot, but like, my mom paid for me. She took me, paid for me to have it done professionally. It was with permission. I was not trying to rebel or sock it to anyone. It was, you know, wasn't even really a fashion statement, really. I just wanted to look like my fairy character in D&D. I played D&D. It's what felt good to me. My mom was always really, really supportive of me having individuality and expressing that, especially through my hair, because it was temporary. I could cut it off or I could dye it something else. And she was like, do you? It's cool. When I was 2, I wanted a haircut over one ear, and she literally did it. I have this little haircut, this little bob on this side and a little over my ear on this side. I loved it. I loved it. And I appreciate very much that my mom allowed me to do that kind of thing. I've always been that way too with my kids. Let them express themselves in a way that isn't damaging. Anyway, but I just felt more like myself that way. When I talked about that in class and I asked that question, I felt like this kind of teaching felt more like not standing out because you are following God, but it felt more like a superiority complex to me, and self-righteousness. And it didn't feel good or correct to say, well, I'm better because I don't have tattoos. I'm better because my hair is its natural color. Yeah, but my teacher responded and said that it's normal for people, but especially teenagers, to want to belong and be like everyone else, but that to be like everyone else was really about being wicked versus being obedient, and that to be righteous, a righteous person, was like being a beacon on the hill. You stand out. And of course, you know, you don't bring other people up, you bring people down. Remember that rhetoric? Like, you have to be careful about who you surround yourself with and who you hang around, and make sure you are being, you know, super strict in your obedience, super rigid, clinging to that iron rod, because everyone knows you're Mormon, so they'll be watching you. And if you do one thing wrong, they will use it as an excuse, like, well, Bray is doing it, so I guess I can too, because she's Mormon and I can be that way as well. You know, but I did accept that as an answer, and I just shut my mouth like a good Mormon girl. But I didn't feel like that was really what I was saying at all, that I wanted to belong or fit in. I mean, like, I did, but also, like, I just didn't like the implication that we were better or above other people. On the other hand, I really did have this kind of major fear of mediocrity. I always felt so overwhelmingly average. Average looks, average intelligence, average grades, kind of overlooked, ignored, unimportant. I felt like a burden in a lot of ways. In my friend group, at home, I did want to be special. Everything I was taught in the church told me I was supposed to be special. Everything pointed to being a daughter of God. So I decided to get my patriarchal blessing, hoping that it would tell me something wonderful. It did tell me that I would be a mother and have sons and daughters, and that was important to me. So I was very happy with that, but the rest of my blessing was just stuffed with things that were just very foreign to me, and were foreign up until the day that I left the church. I'm going to save what's in my blessing for the most part for a separate video about patriarchal blessings, which I'm going to talk about in depth. But so stay tuned for that. I don't know when that's going to happen, but stay tuned for that. But just a sneak peek, it told me things about how I would be super into genealogy and do a lot of work for my ancestors in the temple. It said that when I was older, I would be in the Relief Society, but that I would spend most of my time in Young Women's. Never happened. I was in Relief Society from the day I graduated and went to college, minus the time that I was inactive in college. But when I had callings in Relief Society from the beginning. A couple of short stints in primary. Otherwise, I was in Relief Society. I've never been in Young Women's. It said that I would always have plenty of food and plenty of money and to use my surplus to bless the church and others. I mean, I'm not poor, but I definitely don't have an excess. Never have. In fact, we have been in poverty before. It said that I'd be a missionary all my days and influence many people in the world to come to Christ. And truly, very little of what my blessing said ever came true, or what had been accurate up until the time I left the church. I did become a mom, which I'm very grateful for. Everything else has been a struggle. I mean, I don't know. I didn't know at the time that all those things would be difficult that were in my patriarchal blessing. I just kind of thought, they're supposed to happen, right? So eventually I'd like grow a desire and urgency to do genealogy or go on a mission. I did not want to do any of those things. I still don't want to do any of those things. I was disappointed in the moment, but became even more disappointing as time went on and nothing in my blessing happened, or it seemed less and less applicable. My blessing was barely over a page long, like one whole side, and about this much of the paper, like this much of the paper was just my name, my address, the patriarch, my age, blah blah blah, that kind of thing. So that much of the paper was filled up with information, and then my blessing was just the page and then a couple of paragraphs on the other side. So pretty much just like one whole page. Didn't tell me very much at all. At the same time, one of my best friends had her blessing, and it told her that she had been good friends with Joseph Smith and other impressive historical figures in the pre-earth life, and that her spirit and goodness and intellectual ability was on par with them. And I was really jealous of that. It seemed very important and amazing, and I was just another numbered person. I did not feel special or important to God. But I always struggled with a lot of anxiety and feeling like I had autonomy or individuality as a result of the kind of hive mind that the church and the members, we expected to look, be, and act a certain way, and it needed to align with everything else. And I felt very much like an expendable person. I went to Oakcrest when I was in a beehive. Oakcrest is a week-long girls' camp for beehives, meaning ages 12 to 13. I could go for 2 years, where we would stay in cabins, do camping kind of activities. Kind of think of the movie Parent Trap, where they go, the girls meet at camp. It was very much like that. At Oakcrest, they had this activity, and it was really fun. Like, there was a lot of really fun stuff there. So the whole experience was not just bad, but made some lasting impressions. At Oakcrest, they had this activity out on the green, which was like this big green grassy field where all of these activities, you could do all these activities from naming all of the prophets of the church, reciting the articles of faith, or recite some scripture stories, scripture masteries, which were like specific scriptures that you memorize. You could do something with like the church hymns. I don't know. I remember girls singing. You could grab, make a beaded bracelet or punch designs into a leather bookmark. Grab a root beer or paint something. And every time you did an activity, you would get these Monopoly money dollars, like you'd collect them. So, and they didn't tell us beforehand what the money would be used for. I didn't care really much about that. And I did all the artistic things. I made bracelets. I got a slice of pizza. I got, treat bags, little treat bags. I went into a table where we would do some camp songs, not the hymns, the camp songs. I didn't care about listing the names of the prophets. I did do the articles of faith because I had them memorized. But I spent a lot of time watercoloring, which I still do and enjoy to this day. But you got like a lot of money from doing the churchy things and not very much from doing the worldly things. You'd get like $1 where like you'd get $10 from doing the prophet activity. And I knew there was going to be an object lesson here. Like, we all knew it. We knew it. We were curious. What is this going to be? I'm so interested. But I didn't want to spend my time doing those things in order to win. I didn't do them. Life hasn't ever been a competition with other people for me. So I wasn't interested in beating others or having the most or best. After the games were done, we went to this amphitheater and we all sat there, and then they told us, okay, so you know, there's this price to get into each of the kingdoms of heaven. So it cost this much to get into the terrestrial kingdom, which is the telestial kingdom, which is the lowest kingdom, that isn't, you know, actual hell, which is outer darkness. And it was this much to get into the terrestrial kingdom, which is basically like Earth and, you know, how we are now. And it was this much to get into the celestial kingdom. So we all got separated into our groups, into our kingdoms, and we were told to look around at where we were and to consider how we'd spent our time. Could we have done better? Could we have spent our time doing more things that were pleasing unto the Lord? Could we have spent the time in less selfish, there it is again, and yes, this is what she said, it's burned into my brain, less selfish pursuits, and instead searched for more holy truth. Yeah, so, I mean, after that, we sang quiet hymn songs before we went to bed. They invoked that spirit, which really was guilt at the time. And then we said songs, we prayed, we went to bed. So they sent us to bed feeling shitty about ourselves. Really great way to motivate you to be better tomorrow, right? Anyway, I also attended EFY, which is now FSY. EFY was especially for youth camp. FSY was for the strength of youth. It's the same thing, different name. I went there multiple times. This was for older kids, teenagers. EFY is another week-long camp, but it is on a college campus. For me, it was BYU. A lot of college campuses have it. It's still run by the church, even if it's not at BYU. I did go to BYU. You stay in dorms. You spend the week doing lectures or classes given by leaders of the church and speakers, and you have activities and dances and stuff. Again, a lot of really fun things. Not everything in it was bad. I had a lot of good time. Totally fun in a lot of ways. In that sense, I was raised by John, by the way, and Brad Wilcox. I think that it was Brad who literally in one of the lectures I was in said something like, in the heavens, people from all time will ask when you're from, and you will tell them that you are from the generation that had President Hinckley as a prophet. And a hush will fall around, and then everyone will bow to you because you are the chosen generation. Oh my gosh, people ate that up. Everyone was like, oh, we are so special. We are the chosen generation. We are wonderful. We are good. We are valiant. But EFY was just another place for me to feel inadequate. I didn't cry about things in testimony meeting. I didn't bond closely with the other kids that were there. The best friend I made there was this punky kid who was openly gay, and he had green hair. I had red hair at the time. It was like fire engine red. And we became really good friends for that week. And he was hilarious and snarky and felt like a very safe place to me. And he clearly felt safe with me as well, which I'm really proud of now, especially in the environment where we were both raised, where his whole persona was very much looked down upon and very outcasted. And that did make me feel special, but we didn't have social media. We didn't have our own phones. He was from Oregon. I was from Utah. So after a few emails and friendship of that sort, we kind of lost track of each other. I honestly don't remember his name. I called him Abercrombie because he was always singing that song, Abercrombie Fitch, like, that little punk song. So that's all I remember. I don't remember. Maybe he'll see this and he'll be like, hey, you, and like reach out. That would be super fun. But yeah, anyway, he was awesome. But yeah, I didn't feel things like other kids felt at FSY. We could go to the bookstore at the BYU campus and everyone would be spending their money on pictures of Jesus or prophets or, books about the gospel and stuff. And I bought art books full of beautiful illustrations and paintings and books about Celtic anthropology. And I wondered if I was like past feeling that whole thing where you're not able to feel the spirit. And, because my testimony didn't make me cry and because I didn't feel a burning in my bosom. We were taught often that everyone feels the spirit differently. And I had one seminary teacher who told us his ears burned when he felt the Spirit. So we needed to practice doing all the right things so that we could recognize the correlation between doing those right things and the way we felt, which was the Spirit. Obviously, the Spirit makes you feel good. Anything else makes you feel bad. So if you had any bad feelings, you were actually being tested or whispered to or tempted by the devil, and that was not of God. So adjust yourself. Push it down. Push down those feelings that feel icky. So anyway, yeah, I could never feel the Spirit in the way that I expected to, but I would often be able to very logically think about the topics we were studying in the church. So I became very convinced with the conclusion that the way that I felt the Spirit was through clarity of thought and logic. I could make sense of things in my head that didn't make sense in my heart. In reality, I've come to learn this clarity of thought is just mental gymnastics type situation where I justified and whittled away at my gut feelings that I couldn't fit those things into the wrong, so that I could fit those things into the wrong spaces. But I felt like I was improving and I was learning to feel the Spirit. So time is running out. It's almost been an hour, which I think is a good length for this type of thing. So this has been a long video. I appreciate you sticking around. Overall, from this session, I want to say that looking back on my childhood in the church, there are some red flags. Nothing severe. I was not abused. A lot of people were abused as children, and I'm grateful for that. Nothing severe. It was fine. I did get good things from the church, but not things that I don't think I absolutely could have gotten outside the church. And I certainly got some things that were damaging from the church. So anyway, thank you very much for sticking around for this portion of my Mormon story. I appreciate you very much. Please leave a comment. Let me know what you think. Let's interact about this. I want to know about your childhood as well, especially with TikTok being gone right now. I really hope it comes back because it's such a perfect platform for this kind of thing in this kind of community. If you are on a different platform, please comment. Let me know where you are. I want to follow you. I want to interact with you. I've been downloading all kinds of apps. I'm on like probably 12 different apps right now trying to find my new home. I don't really know where I'm going to go. YouTube's kind of seems like where everything will be curated and stuck because I can put everything there without having to do parts, or, you know, it's not going to get lost. Anyway, let me know where you're at. I still want to connect. I don't want to lose this community. So thank you so much. Think terrestrial. Come back next week for more. Thank you.